Hi, writers. How is everybody doing? Um, I'm really loving how you're all like stretching out your stories by adding these scenes from the past, um, thinking back like why that moment that you wrote about is so significant from an event in your past, or thinking forward in the future and like what you as you grow older, why this moment is so important to you. And today I want to talk about something that we don't often think about, which is the end of the story. I want you to think about this for a second. The end of the story is the writer's opportunity to leave them with something. It's like a present. They could leave them wanting more. They could leave them thinking about an idea. They could leave them wondering or reflecting on their own life. And I've really been thinking about how we always talk about the beginnings and the leads of the story and how it like grabs you and pulls you into the story. But I think endings of the stories are just as significant and just as important. And so I'm just going to read for a minute the end of Fly Away Home. And I want us to think why Eve Bunting chose this ending and why it's such a powerful ending. Okay, that's all I'm going to say for right now. Okay. Then I remember the bird. It took a while, but a door opened, and when the bird left, when it flew free, I know it was singing. So I'm thinking about that ending, and I'm thinking about how the bird and the boy in the story are sort of connected in a way, and how the fact that this bird got free and the bird was singing happiness, that it's connecting. It's sort of wrapping up like this dad and this little boy, they're not going to live in this airport forever. So I think Eve Bunting's really showing us some hope at the end of that story, and giving us hope that this isn't going to end with them continuing to live in the airport, that they will finally get their apartment. So I want you to think today, guys. I want you to think about endings as wrapping it up in a big way. So today, guys, we're going to create an ending for your story by resolving problems and connecting it back to what your story is really, really about. So remember that story, Fly Away Home, is really about this hope that this little boy has. So I'm going to go to a familiar story that we've read and enjoyed before, Charlotte's Web. So this is one of my favorite stories. Even when I was in fifth grade, I wrote E.B. White, and they wrote back, and I had a picture that he sent me and a little note, and it was very special. But I want us to look at E.B. White's ending for Charlotte's Web, and I want us to think for a minute about what is E.B. White trying to show us with this ending? Remembering that endings are the last little bits of writing that this writer can share with the world. Wilbur never forgot Charlotte, although he loved her children and grandchildren dearly. None of the new spiders ever quite took her place in his heart. She was in a class by herself. It's not often that someone comes along who is a true friend and a good writer. Charlotte was both. So I want you to think just for a minute, remembering the story of Charlotte's Web and the friendship that Wilbur and Charlotte had, and how Charlotte actually saved Wilbur's life. I want you to think about why this is such a powerful ending. Think for a minute about that. So I'm thinking about the big points in the story, Charlotte's Web, and I'm thinking about that, like, we may have new people who come into our lives, but they can never really quite take the place of our old friends, the ones that we've really experienced and gone through this journey with together. And I think that's kind of what E.B. White is saying. It's like, yeah, you're going to have new people in your life that you love, um, but it's not the same as this friendship that Charlotte and Wilbur had in this story. So I got to thinking about my own story, thinking about what it is I wanted to say, and remember going back to thinking about what my story is really about. And the story is really about not the sea urchin and all the drama that happened with that, but it's really about um, being a mom and taking care of your kid and knowing that, family is important, and family helps you get through difficult times, and even like scary times like this when we weren't sure what was happening. So I kind of worked on my ending, and I'm going to share it with you. And I'm going to tell you what I was thinking. So this comes from the ending of my story, after I've kind of revised it and worked on it. We're lucky everything turned out okay. It was a long, hot, sweaty, confusing journey to the hospital. But on the return, I realized something. I knew that as long as we had our family, even the difficult times we could get through together. Sitting on that air-conditioned train, looking out toward the sea, that for a minute was my enemy, looking at Julia and Michael trying to read the prescription in Italian, I knew we were okay. So it sort of wraps up, thinking about wrapping up all the big moments in my story. She was okay, we were okay, we got through this like sort of harrowing journey together, but we got through it as a family, and that we got through it by really sort of joining together. And at that moment, I realized that like we will get through difficult things together, that we're stronger together than we are apart. So I ended my story with something I learned. E.B. White is ending his story with a thought or a feeling about this lasting friendship. Eve Bunting's ending her story thinking about what's going to happen in the future, the hope for the future, the hope for this little boy and his dad. So I want you to think about your ending for a minute, and I want you to just read over your ending that you have so far, and I want you to think about, are you wrapping it up? Are you really leaving your reader with that last little bit of magic, a little bit of fairy dust of your story, really letting them think about something, hope for something, learning something? Go ahead and read your ending right now and see what you think is happening in your ending right now. Okay, writers. So remember, you want to have some sort of resolution, some sort of ending, so that the reader really knows that the story is over, that you've sort of wrapped up all the parts and put them together. I'm going to share one more ending with you guys today, before you do a little revision on your ending. And this is another thinking about the future ending, and it comes from the story Because of Winn-Dixie. Otis laughed and strummed his guitar, and the flavor of the litmus lozenge opened in my mouth like a flower blooming, all sweet and sad. And then Otis and Gloria and Stevie and Miss Franny and Dunlop and Amanda and Sweetie Pie and my daddy all started to sing a song. And I listened careful so I could learn right. So, and if you remember in the story, she moves to this town, she doesn't have any people, and then because of her and because of this dog, all of these different kinds of people join together. And it's very hopeful. It reminds me of E. Bunting's story, where, they're going to be okay. You know, they're going to be all right. So I want you to make sure today, writers, when you're working on your endings, that you are leaving your reader with that last bit of magic. Maybe you're thinking about the future, like Kate DiCamillo and Eve Bunting. Maybe you're leaving your reader with something that you learned that they could also learn, right? When we're sharing our experiences with others, it's so that they could make that connection. Like, oh yeah, I can make that. I could do that too. Maybe you want to end with a thought or a feeling, leaving the reader thinking about how important relationships are, or how important learning from each other and helping each other is. So make sure today, guys, that you go through these slides, look over them, and I want you to think about the different ways that you might be able to end your story. And maybe you don't have an ending yet, and you're going to just start drafting it today. You can look over the examples in the Google Slides to help you. And then once you've done that, I want you to reread and see, are you really leaving that that last words? Are those the words that you want to leave your reader with, thinking about what your story is really, really about? And I really am excited to read your endings. Doing this lesson today on the video made me realize how important endings are. And I like to think about it as, I gave you my whole story, but this is what I want you to think about. This is the last thing I'm going to write and let you really think about. So spend some time today, guys, really thinking about what it is you want to leave your reader thinking, wondering, dreaming, hoping. Okay, writers, can't wait to see what you do. Bye-bye.